So welcome everyone to a panel with alumni ECE graduate students, exploring where a master's degree in early childhood education can take you. So before we begin, I just want to make or do a land acknowledgement. Oops, sorry. As you can see here in this photo, if you're familiar with UBC, this is Reconciliation Pole, very near the SCARF building. So this part here is speaking to the long history between education and Indigenous peoples. So as educators and individuals part of that institution, it's important that we acknowledge that history and that UBC is on the unceded ancestral and traditional territory of the Musqueam people. I myself am located in Kits, so that's on the Indigenous territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. If you follow this link here as well, it'll tell you what native land you're on. So if you'd like, you can put that in the chat, what indigenous lands you're on. Just give everyone a moment to make sure they have the link there. Okay. So our plan for today, just generally, so we'll begin with a welcome and introducing myself, as well as the faculty and staff members that we have here. Then we'll do an introduction of the panelists, followed by the majority of the session, which will be questions I've prepared for the panelists. How it'll work is I'll ask one question to all of the panelists, and then we'll take about 1 or 2 questions from the audience related to that specific question or anything that the panelists say towards that. And you can put it in the chat box, and then we can choose from the chat box which question we'd like to ask. After all of the prepared questions have been asked, we'll do a general Q&A with the audience for about 15 to 20 minutes. That might go longer depending on how much time we have and the amount of questions we have. And again, you can put that in the Q&A box and we'll try to answer as many as we can. After that, we'll just do a wrap up. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for attending and registering for the event. So my name is Esther Arculiano. I'm a third-year MA student in the Early Childhood Education program. I'm also the peer advisor for the program, so this is a new role for the program. And I am just trying to figure out my way in this new role and this new time. So please bear with me, and hopefully you all enjoy this event and can take a lot away from it. I'd also like to introduce our faculty here. So first we have Dr. Lori Ford.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lori, and this is very weird knowing there's a bunch of you that I can't even see anything of your faces because I feed off of people's faces usually when I present. But just a quick nod. I have taught at UBC for a while, but in July I started my term as director of the early childhood education programs at UBC. So super excited, learning a lot. I know some of you. I don't know many of you. You can go to the website and pop me an email if you want to know more, and hopefully our paths will cross along the way. Just really appreciate a special thanks to our panelists for doing this. This is just so important. It's a really exciting time in early childhood education at UBC these days. We're proud of what we're doing. We're proud of our graduates who are going to be talking with you today. So thank you guys for taking time this evening, and hopefully we'll have some other events that you can join us with.
Okay, and next we have Dr. Iris Berger.
Hi everybody, I am Iris and located on the Squamish, Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh people's lands here in Vancouver. I just wanted to say how delighted I am to be here. I also know many of you on the panel, and very excited about what is happening in early childhood education at UBC and beyond, and of the growth of early childhood education, for which I mean not only in numbers, but also in influence. And that I have to share the credit with all of you. So thank you for all your work, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. I've been with the Early Childhood Education Unit for many years, teaching, coordinating, inventing. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Iris. And last but not least, we have Dr. Mari Pagini.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here, as I said, sitting in the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish Nations territories. I'm very grateful to be sharing this land so generously offered, or not. That's a topic for another conversation. I want to say that I am also grateful to be with all of you and to see that this is happening, you know, that you have finished your programs, you have graduated, you are professionals, and you were professionals before, and now we're like celebrating all your accomplishments. And to the audience and all the people attending, welcome. I can see many names in the graduate and undergraduate in the diploma programs, and it's so exciting. And thank you to Esther for putting this together, and for Dr. Lori Ford, our new director, but like you said, not new. You've been with us for many years. So yeah, and walking alongside with Iris in early childhood education programs. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe all of our panelists are here, so I'll have them introduce themselves, and we can start with Nancy.
Okay. My name is Nancy Van Groel, and I'm an instructor at Capilano University and a recent graduate from the UBC MA program. I graduated back at the height of just beginning to navigate Zoom. My defense was actually on Zoom, which was a very interesting experience, but one that I learned a lot from, and I'm really grateful to be back here with the UBC community. Esther, do you want us to go in depth the whole question? Sorry.
However you feel, you need to answer it.
Okay. So when I started the MA program, I came actually from Ontario. I'm originally from Ontario, and I was working as a research assistant in Ontario through Ryerson University and the Hospital for Sick Children, and I was also an administrator at a childcare center in Toronto. But now I'm an instructor at Capilano University in the School of Education and Childhood Studies. My MA thesis focused on post-humanist, feminist, and common worlds theoretical perspectives, and I used pedagogical narration and a spiral of attunement to pay attention to the ways lively child-place relationships are enacted, particularly within the context of climate change. So that was my project, and something that I continue to really grapple with, particularly throughout the past 7 months of how we can pay attention differently and come together differently during this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. And I also forgot, just before we move on to the next panelist, I forgot to mention that we have Aurea Vercat here. She is going to be monitoring our Q&A. I don't know, Aurea, I'm sure many of you already know Aurea, but if you want to give maybe a small, no, okay. Thank you, Aurea. And again, thank you for monitoring the Q&A. Next, I'll just go in order from what's in my screen here. So Maggie.
Hi everyone, my name is Maggie Powter, and I am joining you from Whitehorse, Yukon, which is the traditional territory of the Kwanlin First Nation and the Tonquitchon Council. I graduated from the master's program at UBC back in 2015, so it's been a few years. And I currently am a co-owner and operator of a privately owned early learning center here in Whitehorse. And I own it in partnership with my partner. And we, in the Yukon, many of the programs are are operated within the private business model. It isn't ideal. It isn't a lucrative business, but a business nonetheless. But really fortunate to have an incredible program, an incredible partner, and an incredible team here, and yeah, absolutely love the work that we're doing. I also am an instructor at UConn University. It's just become a university. It was a college until just recently. So I am an instructor for a couple of their classes in the early learning and childcare program. Yeah, so I graduated from UBC in 2015. My capstone project topic was around how a Funds of Knowledge framework empowers learners and how that empowerment impacts their learning. It feels like eons ago, but I guess it wasn't all that long ago. And yeah, I think that's the gist of it.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thanks.
And next we'll have Dr. Claudia Diaz.
Thank you, Esther, for the invite. My name is Claudia Diaz. I am calling in from the territories of the Musqueam people where UBC campus is located. And I am a sessional instructor in the Faculty of Education. I teach courses on social justice and education for teacher candidates, and also in the NITA program for Indigenous teacher candidates. I'm also instructor in the Social Justice Institute at UBC, where I teach courses on intersectionality and racial and anti-colonial feminist approaches. And I'm also working currently as an educational consultant in Indigenous initiatives in the Center for Teaching and Learning and Technology at UBC. And I did my master's degree in early childhood education from 2011 to 2013. So it has been a while. And then I did my PhD program, also in the Faculty of Education, but in EDST, and in which I also developed my dissertation on diversity and social responsibility from using perspectives on place, in which I became more aware of my responsibilities as a settler of color in these lands, Musqueam territories, but also in the lands in which we are situated beyond Vancouver, BC, and Canada. So I'm very excited about this invitation. I was unsure about my contribution to this panel because on one hand, as Ida said, I recognize early childhood education, the field of early childhood education, as a place that has helped me to grow as practitioner, as an educator, and also as an scholar. But at the same time, it's not the only work that I do currently. My work is situated beyond early childhood education, towards education more generally, and not only in formal settings, but also in formal settings. So I think my contribution to this discussion comes from that place too.
Thank you, Claudia. And next we'll have Marielle.
Hello, everybody. Very pleased to be here with all of you tonight. So my name is Marielle Gomez, and currently I am a PhD candidate in the program of Human Development and Learning at UBC. But I graduated from an MA in Early Childhood Education also at UBC in 2014. So I've been working with and for early childhood educators for a while, and that has been the focus of my graduate work. For my master thesis, I researched the professional development opportunities of early childhood teachers working in the two main public funded institutions of early childhood education in Chile, which is where I come from. And then when I started my PhD in human development and learning, I wanted to continue building on that work. So the focus of my thesis now is the pre-service education of early childhood teachers, and in particular the practicum component of it. So I am looking at the supervision process that happens between faculty members and early childhood teachers who are doing their practicum. And yeah, what else? Well, my background is in psychology, though. I worked as a psychologist for many years, and clinical psychology, and also in education. And I don't know, I think I have transit to education a little bit by the force of destiny, but also learning more and more that this is what I really want to do. And of course, as we know, psychology and education are linked in many ways, so I think has served me well, the background. And I don't know what else to say, Esther, because I don't know if we are going in depth through all the questions now, or we will have a conversation.
Yeah, we'll continue on with the questions and we'll get more in depth with that. And then next we have Robin.
Hi everyone, I'm Robin McAvoy. I'm from Winnipeg, the traditional home of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Dakota, Dene, and Ojibwe Cree nations on Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis people. I'm so honored and pleased to be here and see all of you, some familiar faces and putting some faces to names, which is great. I started the master's program in 2015 when I was on maternity leave with one of my children. And before that, I'd been working a lot of different places in Manitoba, but most recently with quality enhancement. And I was and am still currently working for the province of Manitoba's Early Learning and Childcare program. I wrote my graduating project on, just briefly, on integrating Indigenous ways of being and knowing into early childhood settings, and some of the truth and reconciliation work that's gone around with that. And I graduated from the program in 2018.
Thank you, Robin. So now we'll get into the first question. So please let me know if I'm talking too fast, and I can repeat the question as well. So my first question is, why did you choose the career path that you're currently on? And in what ways did your master's degree in early childhood education support that career or influence that career path? And we can start with Robin.
Okay, well, it was always my plan, even as a child, to get a master's degree. So that's sort of why I got into the program. I've been working in early childhood education and care for, this will be my 21st year in the field. So it's always sort of been my path. It just made sense to me that I would study ECEs just because of my fascination by children's minds and development in general. So I was really happy to be able to find this program. I would say that the program and my career path influenced my life because it gave me even more insight into my own children's development. I have 5 daughters. The last 2 are twins that I gave birth to while in the program. Particularly the work that I did on my graduating project supported the work that I do with the province. We recently reworked the ECE2 competencies for post-secondary programs in Manitoba to include an Indigenous component throughout each course and the program as a whole. And so currently, as part of my position there, I'm working with several post-secondary institutions so that they can meet the new requirements. Another part of my job that I really enjoy is overseeing our prior learning and competency-based assessment programs. And I feel that the education that I have really helps me understand the education that our participants come with. I find it's really rewarding to work with people who have so much knowledge and experience and to be able to help them to achieve their classification here in Manitoba when they've come from all over the world and decided to land in our province. So I think that pretty much answers the question, I hope.
Okay, thank you, Robin. And next, I'll ask the same question to Claudia. Let me know if you need it to be repeated.
Yes, it would be helpful.
So why did you choose the career path that you're on, and how did the Master's in Early Childhood Education influence that or help facilitate that?
Well, as I said at the beginning, I am coming from education. I am originally coming from Chile, in which I worked as a psychologist, and first as a popular educators, and then as a manager of a poverty reduction program with an emphasis on education in inner city schools. And I did research with youth in prison. And after all that experience, I had the feeling that I really wanted to focus on early childhood, although I'm not an early childhood myself. But I thought that after my experience in inner city schools with children between 8 and 12 years and then youth in prison, I thought, well, I think I need to learn something about early childhood as a foundational stage. That's what I thought back then when I decided to pursue this master's degree. And that came also with the opportunity to apply for a scholarship. So the two things came together, and that's why I enrolled in the master program. But always with the idea of continuing my schoolwork towards the PhD program. And so that was something that I wanted to kind of assess during my master degree. So in a way, as many things in my life, the decision of enrolling in the master program at UBC had to do with kind of a general interest in education, and particularly in early childhood, but also the opportunities that life put us in front of us. So that's why I think it's kind of a short story about the decision and what happened after I graduated from the master's degree.
Okay, thank you, Claudia. And next we'll have Nancy answer the question.
So yeah, starting my master's degree is something that came really naturally as a next step. It was kind of, so I went to Ryerson in Ontario, which is a degree program in ECE specifically. And I had the pleasure to work with a lot of amazing researchers in Ontario there. And it just kind of was, it made sense to be the next step, that I would further my study. I didn't feel finished in the sense. I didn't feel like I had the answers that I wanted. It felt like the questions were just emerging even more in the fourth year of my studies. So I decided to come out here, and I'm so happy I did, because it completely changed my perspective of early childhood education. There's a very different field in BC than there is in Ontario. There's a very different perspective influenced on by a lot of factors. The politics here, how the field has kind of come to be. It's a very different context, and I think that has been really interesting for me to be a part of. So that was why I chose my master's degree. And again, I think choosing this career path also unfolded in a similar way in kind of forming really strong community connections with the ECE community at UBC and beyond in Vancouver. I was really able to kind of feel that sense of purpose and connection in general, and really felt inspired by the work that many researchers, practitioners, everyone in the community is doing here. So again, it was kind of it also felt natural, and just in being surrounded by really amazing thinkers who challenged me to think differently and challenged me to advocate in different ways, and kind of continue to pursue this spiral of questions that, as I mentioned before, they started me off in my graduate studies, and I think they're starting me off further in this career. I still have questions that I want to continue to kind of prod at and see where we can go and how we can kind of envision otherwise and imagine different possibilities together in the field.
Thank you,
Hopefully that
Nancy.
answered the question.
Yes, thank you. A lot of questions for all of us, I think. And next we'll have Maggie.
Well, like Nancy, I went to Ryerson University, and you know, I knew early on when I decided to go into the field of early childhood that a diploma wouldn't feel adequate for me to do this work. So I pursued the degree program at Ryerson University, and again from there knew that further education was sort of inevitable when you have when you still have questions and you know that there's more that you want to know and that you need to know. But when I actually started in the master's program at UBC, I had been a stay-at-home mom with my 3 kids for a number of years, and I had been out of the field for a while, and I really wasn't sure where I would go or what sort of career path I would take. That wasn't something that I had figured out at that point, or if I would be going back to work, or when, or what that would look like. So I just kind of dove in. I had originally planned to move my whole family down to Vancouver for a year to do this master's program. So when they started offering it online, I was thrilled and jumped right in without really just thinking about it, because I felt that this was such a great opportunity. And even throughout my studies during the master's, I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew my options here in the Yukon were limited. And so, you know, and I questioned myself on occasion, what am I, you know, as far as qualifications go here in the Yukon, a level 3 is a level 3, and it doesn't matter if you have a 2-year diploma or a master's degree. It's the same qualifications. So so I wasn't sure what I was doing or where I was going. But during my studies, I went back to work just part-time, and for a program that had some colleagues that I had worked with previously. And it was there that for the first time I actually experienced a program for young children that represented the vision I had always had, that represented what I felt young children deserved. And I had not seen that, not in Ontario, not in the Yukon, not anywhere. And I was seeing that for the first time in this program. So I just, I dove in, and they luckily welcomed me, and I just immersed myself. And eventually, when the original owner of the program was moving on, my partner and I decided to continue on, and then to grow. We last year built a brand new facility. We, you know, doubled our numbers of children, and really grew our program. And through that then began also teaching at the university, began offering professional development opportunities for other early childhood educators, and just really became kind of focused on building capacity within the field here in the Yukon. And so it was the master's program that really kind of lent power to my voice. It kind of gave me the confidence and the capacity that I needed to really advocate for young children and for early childhood educators. And I think it was the education that came with the master's program that really allowed me to articulate what the field needed here in the Yukon in terms of you know, professional development and system changes and all of that. So yeah, so I think that the master's really lent some strength to my voice Yeah, so like I say, starting out, I wasn't sure where my career would go, but it kind of evolved naturally, and it's still evolving.
Thank you, Maggie. And then lastly, we'll have Marielle answer the question.
Thank you. Well, I think I have always been interested in human potential. You know, how can we do for maximizing our potential, you know, growing as people. So I think that's what drawn me to psychology in the first place. And when I graduated, I started immediately working with children, families, and also teachers at schools. But it was not until later when I started to work in research at the University of Chile. Research in education was a center specifically for education. That, as Nancy said, I met so many inspirational people working in ECE that at that time I was looking for continuing my education, doing postgraduate studies, and it coincided with the meeting of these remarkable people dedicated to early childhood education. Not all of them were educators, maybe half of them, but there were also psychologists and anthropologists and social workers. So I was so lucky, I think, of having found those people, and that I think they influenced my decision to do a master's in early childhood education and not in psychology. So then I came here, and I think it was the right decision, because if you ask me now, the truth is, I really believe that the work that teachers do, and in particular early childhood teachers, well done, is one of the most challenging and difficult works to do. And the responsibility is immense. And I think the possibilities also are immense. So I think there are many things that need to change in our society regarding, the status of the early childhood teachers and the payment and, social policies, etc. So I thought that pursuing a PhD that was also focused on the education of early childhood teachers will help me later on, which I wish, to advocate for the work that early childhood teachers do and contribute to the changes I would like to see. So that's my story.
Thank you, Marielle. It's nice to hear everyone's origin stories and see maybe a little part of each of us in you and see where you are now. And Arya, we'll take some questions if there are any, just related to what we've been talking about.
Not to that in particular. It was more with respect to what PhD programs are available for people who have completed their masters in early childhood education. That's the question we have there.
Okay. Marielle and Claudia have both been through the PhD program at UBC. I don't know if you want to speak to that, to your program specifically.
Yeah, I can say something about that. Well, I did my Master of Education at UBC, no my Master of Arts. I think Marielle has she followed the research-based master. I did the course-based master. And I was told that because of that, I was not going to have any chance to get into a PhD program at a university like UBC. And I'm saying this because if you are thinking about following or pursuing a PhD program and you feel like you don't have the qualification for it, here there's a story that shows the opposite. So I was told that, but also I was told that I could give it a try, and so I did my research about it. And when I say I did my research, basically I talked to many people who were part of UBC. I talked to faculty, I talked to doctoral students, and I decided to apply. And because I was able to show my ability to do research, I got in, and I was also fortunate to get a scholarship to do my PhD program. So I'm telling this story to answer that question, and I understand that any program, any PhD program, is looking for students with master degrees. And I think the application for those programs, in those applications, is really important that, first of all, you know what it means to do a PhD, because the PhD is not a master, a longer master. It's really path in which you develop kind of spend time thinking about research in several ways. And as Nancy said, I would say that early childhood education is doing a lot of work, theoretical work, to change the way we understand, for example, childhood, the child, and research. And that is quite intensive and quite specific. But if you are interested in that track, I would say that with a master's degree in early childhood, you are eligible to apply. So I think that's something I can add to that question.
Thank you, Claudia. Mario, did you want to add any more comments?
What was the question? Could you remind me, Aurea?
Yes, of course. What PhD programs are available for people who have completed their masters in early childhood education?
Well, I think maybe Dr. Ford will be more qualified than me to answer which particular programs in the faculty, because I don't remember all of them, but I am doing a program in human development and learning, but also there is educational studies and also curriculum. And I think that a person with a master's in early childhood education wanting to pursue a PhD in the faculty currently, you can apply to several programs as long as your research, your proposed research for the program is very well developed. Because as we know, early childhood education is a very broad field. So I think we could work and develop a project in many of the programs that are already running. And I think Lori has a lot of experience with this because she has, students who has been in the program.
I have a million of them.
Yeah.
I don't want to, I can do just a really quick, I know I'm not officially on the panel, but just to follow up on that is, I think one of the things that's really nice about the MA program in particular is that, and I think we're even doing more of this, I think our students, and you've got some really great examples here, we have sort of our foundation of what you need to do in terms of research, usually to go on for doctoral work. You need to have some foundations in research, and you would get those foundations when you're in the MA program. You'd want to talk with your supervisor about which type of doctoral program you might want to go into. Some of them, a PhD, might, in certain areas, might place a bit more emphasis on certain types of research or more research. But I think that in general, I think the MA program here at UBC prepares you quite nicely for a number of them. And again, a lot of it's just about fit. I mean, clearly there are some programs that you need to have there's a lot of sort of prerequisite skills. I also teach in the school and applied child psychology program, so counseling psychology or school psychology. Those probably aren't as easy of a move into because there's so much clinical training that you go into that. But things like the program that Marielle is in human learning development and culture, there's a number of specialization areas within language and literacy. There's areas within ed studies and curriculum, and actually another great area. One of my students a number of years ago actually pursued her PhD in interdisciplinary studies. So I think in general you've got really nice foundations. The trick is you got to look a little bit ahead, that you have the background, that you're doing some of the writings, that you make yourself competitive, and that you do some of the research experiences. But I would say that there's probably more opportunities than there are doors that would be closed, would be my opinion, with some good supportive mentorship. Sorry to, Esther, you knew I'd crash your panel at some point. I can never.
This is why we have you.
I try and I try, but I still get in. Thank you for the chance.
Okay, thank you. So we'll just move along with the next question in the interest of time. So this question, I'll just read it out for everyone. Specifically with COVID, or especially considering COVID, where do you each see yourself in the next 5 years? And how do you think that path will or has already changed? So we'll start with Maggie.
This is a great question for me because I always have a 5-year plan, except that it's ever changing. As it stands right now, I am teaching on floor with the children full time. And then in addition to that, running the business, you know, managing, administrating, and also teaching for the university. So it's a lot of and. So in the future, I see myself for sure stepping back from the direct work with the children. And that's unfortunate in a lot of ways because I find that tends to be what happens. The more education you know, we get, the less time we spend directly with kids, which is really unfortunate. So I've resisted that until now, but I also am realizing that if I'm going to focus on building capacity and really creating change in the field up here, up north, then I do have to step back from that direct work with the children. So yeah, my plan over the next few years is to build on the consulting side of what my partner and I are doing, and really focus on that capacity building piece. COVID, I think, has changed that in some ways. It remains to be seen how that will sort of play out, but you know, I had anticipated some travel, particularly to northern communities, which likely would be more limited now. Professional development opportunities that I'm able to provide have changed. You know, in some ways it's made some kinds of professional development a lot more accessible. You know, like this, we're all able to zoom in and we're realizing how accessible that is, which is great. But what I think will really have an impact on the path that I take in the next few years will actually be these conversations that we're having here in the Yukon as well as across the country around universal childcare and what that will look like. I'm very aware that here in the Yukon, we're nowhere near ready for that in terms of quality of programming or a number of ECEs or you know, training and development of ECEs. So I think that is actually going to have a much larger impact on the direction that my career will go in the next few years.
Thank you, Maggie. And then same question we'll have Robin speak to.
Do you want to just repeat that? What we'll see ourselves in 5 years?
Yes, and how do you think that path has changed or will change, especially considering COVID?
Well, I think my path has changed kind of dramatically in the past few years. I'm very fortunate in that I've decided to work part-time and keep working part-time, partially due to COVID and partially because my younger children are still in childcare at this time. And so I think once this pandemic ends, if it ends, and when my children have grown a little older, I'll be in a better position to leverage all of the learning that I gained through this program and work more on possible directions for my career. I'd like to teach. I worked as an early childhood consultant in the past, and I'd like to do that again. I also like the work that I do in government and would like to continue that. So there's a lot of different directions I could go, and I'm just sort of toying with what would be the best fit for me moving forward with my own goals and my family goals. COVID has changed a lot of things for the way that, in terms of the way that we communicate with our sector, and the way that we can offer supports in different ways. So, you know, learning how to use Zoom and Teams and Meet is something that I probably wouldn't have focused on as much unless before the pandemic happened and we changed these ways to communicate. And now it's sort of opened me up to all the different ways that we can support both the participants in my program and the broader early learning and childcare community here in Manitoba, especially. We have so many centers in rural communities and in northern communities that would really benefit from support. And now I feel like we've, you know, trying to see the positive, we've found, you know, that we can offer different things in new ways to be able to better support them, or even offer more support, or have, you know, like more than just a telephone conversation while everyone's working with children on the floor and there's noise in the background, you know. So it's just, I noticed with our COVID response in terms of the provincial government, the way that we communicated with the sector needed to change. And I think that the pandemic has sort of forced that to happen in a good way. So in terms of myself in 5 years, there's a lot of different directions I could go, and I'm just open to sort of thinking about what comes my way and what opportunities that I have going forward.
Thank you, Robin. And then same question to Nancy.
We'll start with that it's hard to envision what the next 5 years will be like in the midst of an evolving global pandemic, but I'll do the best that I can because I see a lot of hope at the moment. I see myself continuing to teach, continuing to be an advocate for the early years, really advocating for transformative and situated responsive change in the field that's already been initiated, but has really kind of been illuminated over the past 10 months or so as well. And really kind of advocating again for moving beyond kind of this discourse of service and quality that is so at the front of the news right now in the discussions around early childhood education. For me, I think that's the biggest change, is that certainly I had kind of next steps and research interests when I finished my MA thesis, but that has been so contextualized within this pandemic and has really exposed certain areas that I really want to kind of grapple with in my teaching with future early childhood educators, as well as in my community, the connections in the community that I have made throughout my time in my MA. I see that COVID has really exposed both the fragility of the early year system in Canada, but also the resilience in a sense. I've gotten the opportunity to work really closely with students in practicum settings in the past fall, and really seen firsthand kind of how centers are struggling and how centers are also coming together in really beautiful ways. So that's been really incredible to see both of those things, and to really see how kind of this dominant discourse that has been so evident the past 10 months or so of how EC is a service, its positions as such a service in that narrative, rather than the educational and political and pedagogical project that I think it can be. And I think that so many of us in this program at UBC and beyond are really working towards. So in that sense, I'm really interested in the intimacies that COVID has allowed, in the sense that we're all looking into each other's homes kind of right now. So yes, again, this has sent me into another sort of spiral, to continue that metaphor that I introduced earlier. But again, a lot of possibility and a lot of just really interesting kind of perspectives and ways to come together.
Thank you, Nancy. That's one good thing to come out of COVID. And then next we'll have Marielle. Where do you see yourself in 5 years and how that has changed with COVID?
Well, I think it has changed in two ways. First, I think there will be, for me and for everybody, a lot more of online work, which I think we are all getting used to. Teaching and otherwise, which I don't necessarily see as a bad thing, but I think this came to stay, even if COVID is gone. And that's gonna change many parts of our daily work, I think. Not completely, obviously, because we'll need still work face to face. But the other big change, maybe more profound and structural, that I am envisioning is that I think, especially in early childhood education, we will need to incorporate more and more, and probably urgently, the work with nature and the more than human element in what we already do. But I think this, because when we talk about COVID, I think environmental crisis, that's what I think, what was the cause of this pandemic, which is not gonna be gone, even if we found a vaccine. So I think we will need to face that more and more, and I'm really excited about it. And I also feel, to be honest, like a weight on my shoulders, because I think we are living a very extraordinary time, with real, danger and vulnerability. And we will need to think of ways in which we will, contribute to the education of the next generations in a way that they will not only survive, but also thrive, hopefully, with the planet. So that's one of the big things in my mind lately, and I'm trying to educate myself as much as I can, of issues about environmental, climate, and all the wonderful work that many people and grassroots groups are already doing. And of course, this is also a very political topic, but I think I see myself, there's no option but to, educate myself about it. That's it.
Thank you, Marielle. And then Claudia, finally, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question. And I guess I'm going to repeat what everybody has said. COVID is the perfect reminder that we have no idea what is going to happen in 5 more years. So for me, it's like I kind of learned to not see myself in the future. I do have certain, I wish for certain things, right? And I do have an idea of the path that I would like to take. But if I think about my past, I realize that many of the things that I envision for my present now have changed, because I think the biggest challenge that we are facing is trying to be as open-minded as possible to learn other ways of being in this world. And it's a precarious world. And that's not a negative thing. It's not a pessimistic way of looking at the future, but I would say it's responsible way to understand that we need to figure out different ways of working with others and bringing our work towards different ways of understanding how we live all together in the challenges of the current times. So yeah, I think I see myself different of how I am today, and perhaps doing different things that I cannot imagine in the present moment. But yeah, I think that's the closest answer to your question.
Thank you, Claudia. And then, so we won't have an audience question for this, just so we stay within the time. So my next question is, knowing what you know now and where you currently are in your career and in life, what advice would you give your past self when you were in the program? So we'll start with Claudia.
I was thinking about that question, and I wasn't able to find a really good answer. Perhaps the best way to put it is that sometimes when we are in an academic program like the Master in Early Childhood Education, we face many insecurities about our ability to write, to study, to research, to get involved in collaborative work. And I would say that if I have to give an advice to my past self, I would say just go over that. Like, just do the work that you are passionate about. If you feel discomfort in doing that work, go for it. Be gentle with yourself, be kind with yourself, and just follow the things that you are curious about. Because I think sometimes because we are in these institutions that emphasize so much certain values and to be better at, to be better off all the time. Sometimes we get into these narratives that instead of helping us to move forward, it's really prevented us to be creative and engage with the work we are passionate about. So I think that's something that is a good reminder for myself and perhaps for others.
Thank you, Claudia. I know I need to be reminded of that too sometimes, so thank you. And then we'll have Maggie speak to this question.
Yeah, I mean, just some really practical considerations. I did the program online almost completely. And so I struggled with time management. I kind of obsessed a little bit and, you know, was immersed around the clock. And so I just really recommend managing your time and setting aside chunks of time to work and setting aside chunks of time, just as importantly, to not work. Because you can kind of lose yourself if you don't do that. And, you know, the rest of life is still important too. So time management was a big thing. The other thing in terms of studying online, I did go down to Vancouver for the intensive courses, and I really, really recommend doing that if you can, if you're studying online. Being with other students, I mean, if you can be, once we can do that again, learning in person, and meeting the instructors and meeting, you know, the other students in your cohort was really, really valuable. And just keeping connections and keeping, you know, networking with the people in your cohort and with, you know, the people that you meet along the way, because those connections become really important in terms of, you know, being with like-minded thinkers and having opportunities to think with others. Those connections become really, really important.
Thank you, Maggie. And we'll have Nancy answer the question.
I have a lot of advice for myself. But I think the biggest thing that I wish I could have told myself in the midst of everything was that this feeling of being lost, because I felt lost at a lot of times throughout. But that feeling lost kind of in the process can be really beautiful because it really creates these contexts for rich growth and exploration and experimentation. I think in those times of feeling lost, and I mean like theoretically lost, like with different types, like all different types of lost, but really leaning into kind of the support system that is at UBC and the mentors that are so amazing and so willing to kind of be there in that kind of mentorship role. I think I would have told myself to kind of lean into that before. I had a lot of preconceived notions of who a graduate student was supposed to be and what my role was and what I was supposed to be doing. And I kind of think that in unknowing those preconceived notions, in a sense, I was really able to kind of fully situate myself and position myself within these theoretical and ethical and even pedagogical orientations even further. So kind of in a sense, not to get too poetic, but I had to get a little lost to get found, and really relying on the people around me to find myself was what really got me through.
Thank you, Nancy. And Marielle, what advice would you give your past self?
I think to explore, to use the time of being a graduate student to explore as much as possible, you know, kind of remembering that we might not have this opportunity or the same amount of time once we are fully working outside. So that's one thing. And the other thing is to go deep. I would say to myself, if you find, you know, like an author or a group of people that are doing a great job in what you are interested in, try to go in depth into studying their ideas and their work. You know, taking this opportunity to really delve into it. Because again, once one is fully working outside, is much more challenging to find the time, the energy, the focus to do that. And I think one of the things that the graduate student and the context of being in the academia can give us is, you know, that atmosphere to really delve into ideas and ideas basically. the world of wonderful. There has been wonderful people, you know, developing an amazing systems even, that I think is our opportunity now to delve into it. That's it, Esther.
Thank you, Maria. And then lastly, Robin, what advice would you give your past self?
I really liked this question. I'm not sure that I have a lot to add, sort of just building on the themes that have been shared here, but I would say ask all your questions while you have your cohort with you, whether it's your, you know, your beliefs, your values, your ideas, and whether it's, you know, how to cite properly in APA, all of the questions, because you have such, you know, you have so many people who are in your cohort with you who may have the same questions or can help you to see things in a new and different way. And your instructors, I found, were all so supportive of me throughout this journey. And I just feel like it was the perfect place to really delve into all the questions that you have, and just the ability, even though I also did the program online, the ability to discuss and share, and, you know, it was a really beautiful time of learning for me, and I'm really grateful for that. And I kind of, if I could go back, I would ask more questions, and, you know, you know, get even more involved in the discussions and forums that we had, because I just found it was such a great experience. I would say that, and I would also say, you know, when things will get, well, things for me got overwhelming with the amount of work and things that were happening in my life. And when things get overwhelming, I just I feel like if I could go back, I would say to myself, just take a deep breath. Everything's going to be okay. You can do this, and just keep on moving forward. And like Claudia said, to be gentle with yourself as well. And as Maggie said, take some time to work and take some time to not work. So I think that's really important to figure out what works best for you, and then do what makes the most sense for you.
Thank you, Robin. That's a great place to stop. So those are all my questions. If anyone has any general questions in the audience, we'll open that up now, or if there's questions from before. Aria?
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions. What PhD programs are available? Oh, no, sorry, that's the old one, sorry. I already answered that. Would someone be able to speak to the differences between pursuing an MA versus an MEd, and where they would both lead in terms of future careers and further studies opportunities? So this person is considering between pursuing a master in English or LLED after working in ECE and high schools for a while.
I think I can build a little bit on what Claudia already said. Claudia spoke about the experience of doing an MEd instead of an MA. And I can speak about the experience of doing an MA, which I did. Well, the thing with the MA is that we need to do a thesis. So we need to conduct a mini research project, which it may or may not, but for many people, that's the case, that it takes a little bit more time, especially if you are collecting data, which was my case. So I think that added at least 6 months more that if I weren't doing it, because I had to travel, I had to contact the people and actually do the field work. So I think that's it's a difference, it's an important difference. And even though I totally agree with what Claudia said regarding that you totally can pursue an academic path afterwards with an MA, if you have the ability to do research and you have a good plan, that's totally possible. But I would say in many instances, it might help you to have an MA, because that's the kind of the natural path for people who are interested in pursuing an academic job afterwards. So it might be easier for you, for example, to get accepted to a PhD program or to get a job in an academic position afterwards. It depends, of course. It depends on the job, it depends on the work you have done, your qualification, etc. But it's an element to consider. That's what I could say.
Yeah.
And I would like to add, just very briefly, that although I did a MEd and I got accepted in a PhD program, I would say that it took me time. I imagine myself, if I would have had a MA, probably my way into my research proposal and research itself perhaps would have taken me the time that it took me. Because in a way, I was also a little bit lost theoretically, which was, it was like also a gift, but it was a time that I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And perhaps, and I'm not sure, but perhaps going into the MA instead of the MEd would have given me that time to think about theoretically what I wanted to pursue in my PhD. So I just wanted to say that there are pros and cons. Typically, the MA is, as Mariel said, a very common path to go into the PhD. It's not the only one, but it would help you with many skills, research skills, to go into the PhD program.
Thank you. And also just to speak to my experience, I am in the MA program, and I initially, or in the earlier years of my program, I did hope to go into the PhD, but that has changed now. So there's a lot of other career paths that I'm looking towards, and I think with these changing times, I think it's a good time to start exploring different options. And Arya, were there other questions?
Yeah, there is one more. Are there any professional development opportunities provided by the program? What's the biggest challenge when you study the master?
There are, can I answer? Yes, I would say that that's one of the strengths of the program, that I felt that there were a lot of opportunities to be connected in terms of professional development. There are the Brown Bag series, which I'm not sure if they started again this fall, but they were happening. I think there was one maybe online, but I don't remember now. All of the Zooms are blurring together. But there are the Brown Bag lunches, that was what they originally were, where some sort of researcher would come and present. Sometimes it would be a PhD student, sometimes it would be a visiting scholar, perhaps a researcher in a different part of UBC. So that was really amazing to kind of see interdisciplinary connections as well, of how all the fields can kind of have resonance within early childhood education. That was amazing. Also, SPARC, the graduate student conference, was something absolutely fundamental to my time at UBC. It was such an amazing way to be connected with the community. I was part of the organizing committee, so I was really able to form connections with local practitioners, even international advocates for ECE, people within Canada. So that was really amazing. And students are also able to volunteer and attend at that conference too. So that was incredible in terms of the professional development. And remember, you're a part of UBC, which is this huge university that has all of these amazing research departments. So you are able to kind of really get the best of that and explore. So absolutely, I think that's one of the things that UBC really does well. And you can look up on all of the faculty profiles. You can kind of do a search to see who's interested in ECE, and you'll see that many of the interests kind of expand even beyond that. And so, yeah, I would say, long story short, yes, there are many professional development opportunities. And there's a lot for kind of different types of research focus. There's definitely a path for everyone there.
Thank you, Nancy.
I think we've already spoken to the biggest challenges also. That was the second part of that question.
And Maggie and Robin, just from an online perspective, did you feel the same, or did you have the same experience in terms of professional development and interacting with UBC and the program?
I can speak to that a bit. I would say I was probably less involved than Nancy, and I think part of that was the distance, and part of that probably was just where I was at in life with young kids and so on. So yeah, I mean, I guess part of that advice for my, if I were to do this again, would be to get more involved in some of those things, for sure, because yeah, from a distance, I don't feel that I took part in as many as I could have or would have liked to.
And Robin?
I would say probably the same as Maggie. I did get many emails, I think mostly from the different parts of the program. And I think even still as an alumni, now I feel more like those professional development opportunities are more valuable to me now, I think, than they were even as when I was a student, just because I'm happy to stay connected and to be a UBC graduate, and I'm happy to, get those opportunities. When I was a student, I think it was difficult because I was in Winnipeg and the program was in BC, but I mean, I did have the opportunity. I mentioned in the chat that I spent 3 days in Vancouver doing an independent study, and I think that opportunity was as much professional development as I could have ever wished for in my life. It was just such a great experience to meet and to meet people and researchers and see the different programs that we were able to visit and all of those kinds of things. It was such a good opportunity. And but like I said, as an alumni, I feel really grateful to have those opportunities to continue my professional development in that way.
Thank you. And Aria, were there more questions?
No, not anymore. And just to jump in and extend on what Nancy said, in the CCR website, you can find all of the faculty members that have connections to early childhood education within UBC. So just to emphasize the interdisciplinarity of the field and how much it's also in our hands to reach out to these faculty members who are amazing and connected to the field. But no more questions.
Mari?
Oh no, I was just telling Aria I just saw one more question that just came up right now. As you were saying that there's no more questions.
Okay. I am wanting to get experience teaching at the post-secondary level. Does UBC ever seek out educators for online courses?
I don't believe that's a question any of our panelists can answer, or myself. I'm not sure. Maybe we can sideline that and we can get back to this person.
Can I add something to the previous question too? Just
in
the sense that I just want to add for that, the online component, there has been so much change in the past. Again, I'm going to harp on this past 10 month thing, but look at where we are right now. I mean, I had not had the opportunity to meet Maggie or Robin before in person, but we're able to come together in Zoom like this. So I think that the next year, or the next years, plural, in terms of if you're thinking of starting your program, there's a lot of room for innovation in the sense of how we can come together in these virtual spaces. And I think someone even in the chat was saying that they attended a professional development workshop last night. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity that's kind of coming out of this, of all of the bad that this past year has had. The way that we can come together is really inspiring and is really kind of energizing in a sense, that I can see all of you and I'm just in my house right now. So that's definitely something to think about as you're considering too.
Okay, so I think we'll end it there. So EC is definitely, I think, we'd like to think of it as like an emerging field, even though EC has been here for a long time, and we're finally, I think, having people hear us. So it's good that we're interacting and to see so many people here, so many people interested in ECE. So I'd just like to thank everyone for coming out, and for the panelists for giving their thoughts and sharing their experiences. And then just one last thing. So I've asked all of the panelists if it's okay to share their information here. So I'll just put that on the screen, and you can feel free to send them an email or connect in that way. So I'll just leave that up there. But thank you all for coming, and I'll also be sending you a feedback form to see what your experience was with the webinar and how we can improve in the future, and hopefully have more webinars like this. So thank you everyone for attending.
Thanks so much, everyone. It was great to be here.
Thank you to all of you for coming too. Have a great night and stay safe. Thank you to all the students and the graduates from EC 17 and 18 and 19 and 20 and undergraduates.
And thank you so much, Esther, for organizing all of this opportunity for us to come and share our experiences. It was, it was really great of you, and I really appreciate being included.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you. This has been wonderful. Nice to see everyone.
Bye.
Bye.